Are you looking to build an Etsy shop from scratch? This is the right video for you. So we're gonna go over 8 steps of how to start an Etsy shop from the absolute beginning stages. So a few quick notes first. Number 1, there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to make money from your talent or make money utilizing the skills that you've attained in whatever your craft is. So I hope that no one will ever make you feel guilty about that, and I hope that that is not something that is standing in your way. And number 2, I know there's a lot of negative opinions about Etsy as a platform, and I do think it has changed over the past several years a little bit. That's okay. I feel 100% confident, and the numbers speak for themselves. There is absolutely still a customer base on Etsy that wants to purchase handmade products from people like you. So don't let the negative opinions stop you. Try to just avoid the noise and just focus on you and what you want to accomplish. And don't ever feel bad about having this ambition to start an Etsy shop. And it's not embarrassing. It's not a shame. There's nothing bad about selling on Etsy. It's a perfectly okay thing to do. And one more thing, for all the people that dislike Etsy, that's totally okay. We'll leave them over there, and their absence is going to create more opportunity for us. So with that being said, let's get into it. Okay, so the first step in creating a new Etsy shop is to decide what you're going to sell. So the recommendations that I read when I was setting up my shop was to come up with 10 different product ideas to get started. So the reasoning behind 10 products is basically just to make your shop look more legitimate, give you more credibility when you launch. If you come across an Etsy shop with only 1 or 2 products, you may be less likely to take a risk and purchase something from that store because there's something about it that feels very amateur, feels like that person's just a beginner, whatever it is. So come up with 10 ideas. They don't need to be completely unique products like all over the place. It can be very similar products. It can just be variations of one product. You can do different colors as different listings. Whatever you do, you just want to come up with more listings to give that impression of credibility and a well-developed store. So there's a few things to keep in mind when you're coming up with these 10 product ideas. 1, I would suggest that you approach everything as if it's going to be the next big seller. And as if this product is going to absolutely take off, everyone's going to buy it, and you're going to spend the next several months of your life or even years of your life just making exactly this product. So that'll help you to make sure that what you're producing are things that you can produce in a higher volume and you can meet the demand, and you're not going to be miserable building these things over and over and over again. So the more simple you can keep it while still having a remarkable product, the better off you're going to be. The other thing I would suggest, if you're able to, keep your products so that once you get an order, you can make the thing at that time to fulfill the order. This might not make sense for everybody, but for my business, I've really appreciated that I've done that because I don't really have to invest in supplies. I don't have a bunch of inventory sitting around. There's not a lot of capital investment on the front end because I could just wait for the order to come in and then, okay, now I can go buy the things and I can make this, or I can just buy a little bit of stuff so that if an order comes in, then I can just make it. So that's gonna help you. It's gonna make it easier financially, and it's just gonna kind of make it a little bit more logical. And if you have limited space, then you don't have to worry about having to store a bunch of stuff. Some of your 10 products, they might not sell at all. So you don't wanna waste a bunch of time on things that aren't gonna go anywhere. So keep it build to order if at all possible. Okay, and then the last thing, keep in mind your processing time. So I think when you're launching an Etsy shop, it's a little bit better to keep your processing times as low as possible. So when I launched mine, my processing time was, I think, 3 to 5 business days. So that means when I received the order, within 3 to 5 days, I was shipping it to the customer. Now that was a little bit too aggressive for built to order woodworking products that were going to be stained, but it helped me to get those initial orders because people weren't going to have to wait so long to receive their item. So I think from the beginning, if you can start with a little bit quicker processing time, that's going to help you to make those initial orders, and then eventually, as you develop your brand and you establish your credibility, then you have the flexibility to change your processing time. And now my processing time is 2 weeks. And I try to ship it a little bit earlier where possible. Okay, step 2. Now you need to create and test your products. So you came up with your 10 ideas. Now you need to build, at a minimum, you need to build one of each, because you're going to need to take photos of these products to create your listings. But really what you want to do is build maybe a couple, 2 to 3 of each thing, so that you really are getting that experience of how the production for this item is going to be. And the other thing is that you really want to test your products, because you want your quality to be top notch, and you want to put the best product out there that you possibly can with the skill set that you have at this time. And that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but it means it's going to be the best that you can do now, and then later you're always going to improve on your product. Every day you're going to be improving, but you want to test it. So give yourself a couple weeks of time, even if it's just something that hangs on the wall. You want to practice hanging it, you want to practice packaging it, unboxing it. Just feel what the whole customer experience is going to be, and let that thing hang on the wall for a couple of weeks. See, does it fall down? Is it still secure? Did anything go weird with the finishing? So this will just really help you to make sure that your product is the best that it can be, and that the customer is going to be getting what they expect. Okay, the next step is taking photos of your products. And it's okay if you don't have any experience at all. I didn't, but you can start very simple, and you can do this with just the phone that you have in your hands. And there's easy ways to get it done. So start simple with your photographs. Do it in natural lighting. Try to take your pictures at a similar time of day and a similar location, so that kind of your coloring is going to be consistent across all of your photos. For example, in the morning, the light is going to be a little bit more of a cool tone, versus in the afternoon, we're going to get more of that golden tone, like the golden hour. So try to stay consistent with your natural lighting, and that will help just to kind of, again, have the consistency across all of your photos. When you're taking pictures, take as many as you can. Be as thorough as you can with the photos of your product. Show your customers every aspect and nook and cranny of the product, and that just clears out any ambiguity and any questions in the customer's mind. So some of the best compliments, which it's a good compliment, but also it's a criticism at the same time, but a lot of my reviewers have said that the product is much better than it looks in the photos, which makes me feel like, okay, I need to improve my photos. I'm glad that it exceeded their expectations. So it's always better to keep your photos very realistic. Don't oversell your product. Don't over edit your photos. Don't use weird filters and stuff like that. Keep it very realistic, especially if you're trying to show different colors. Colors can be very, very tricky to capture in a photo. So the more realistic and accurate you can keep it, the better. And then another thing to keep in mind is when you're setting up your shop, when you're coming up with these 10 product ideas, keep in mind that the more variations you have, and that could be colors. For example, all of my products I offer in 10 different stain colors, which is way too much, but I have never changed it. I started it with 10 colors, and I didn't even think that, that could make my life more difficult, but it has, because people want to see the product in all of those 10 colors. So that means anytime I make a new product or change something, I need to stain 10 different pieces of those products in order to get my photos for all of the color options. So keep that in mind, that all of these little variations that you add is gonna mean more photos are required. So if you can do less, I think that would be better, and is again gonna make your life easier. And then the last thing that I'll note is that there have been a few instances that I've become aware of, and I don't really search this stuff out, but people have definitely stolen my photos for my products and used them to sell in another Etsy shop. Somebody was selling them on Amazon, and customers actually brought these to my attention. I don't seek it out because it hurts my feelings when I see stuff like that, so I just try to avoid it, and I just stick to what I'm doing. But I have come across it a few times. But the important thing to know is that your photos are your intellectual property. You may not own the product idea. Somebody can steal your idea, but they can't steal your photos. And so in those few cases, I've actually been able to get the listings taken down. Even with Amazon, I had to write them a handwritten letter telling them this person stole my photos and they're selling the product. And the weird thing is that that person was actually buying the product from my Etsy shop when somebody would order it in their Amazon shop. And they were selling it for a cheaper price on Amazon than I was selling it for. So it's like people would order from them, they would buy it from me, paid me more money than they were even getting to sell the product. It was just a very weird situation. But the point is, your photos are your intellectual property. And the other point is that people will steal your ideas, your listings, your photos, your descriptions, your titles. Anything you put out there, people, it's fair game. So just be prepared for that. Okay, so pricing. This is a very difficult topic to address. There's kind of no like set formula of how to price your products. You can do a lot of research and a lot of people have kind of their own theories. So I'm not gonna really share that here, but my suggestion would be to figure out what you want your profit margin to be on your product. So for example, for me, when I started out, I was targeting like a 50 to 60% profit margin on each product. So from that 50 to 60% that I wanted to achieve, I could kind of back into what my price has to be based on my material costs, the cost of shipping supplies, the platform fees on Etsy, payment processing fees, my labor cost, everything like that, and then kind of back into the price. And for some of the products, I couldn't get that 50 to 60%, and those products, like, then I just didn't end up selling them because you really have to make it worth your time, and you don't cheat yourself. You certainly don't want to do that because making handmade products is very labor intensive, and if we're making money, we want to actually be making money. We don't want just money coming in that's then just going back out on materials and stuff because we didn't really give ourselves that margin. Pricing is very personal. It's very complicated. I'll try to do another video in the future about kind of more of like a formula that you can use. But the punchline here is to just make sure you're getting paid for what you're doing. Things are priced so high in today's economy because everything costs so much. And you go on Etsy and you see what people are selling and the prices seem kind of outrageous sometimes, but it's like it's expensive to make stuff, it's expensive to run a business. There's a lot of costs involved in it, and you really have to be fair to yourself when you're pricing your products. Okay, the next category is kind of the business side of things. So this will kind of depend on what your goals are, but at a minimum, I would definitely establish a legal entity and a separate business bank account to use for your Etsy account. And then I would also have an accounting software so you can keep track of all your numbers and your financials, and you can keep it separated from your personal stuff. This is going to help you at tax time, and it's just, even if you're just doing this as a side hustle, I think it's a necessity because it's a business, it's something separate. So you want to really be able to financially separate that and see exactly how it's going for you. And then the other thing that's important to know, I mean, there's so many things that we could discuss in this kind of like official business category, but the other thing that you might want to consider from day one is if you set up your legal entity, you can get a reseller certificate so that when you're buying the materials that you're using to make your products, you don't have to pay sales tax on those. So basically, anything that's going to end up in your customer's hand, you can use your reseller certificate and avoid paying sales tax because the customer is already paying sales tax when they purchase it from you. So it's basically just avoiding that double taxation. So including like the shipping box, the shipping supplies, anything that's going from your hands and it's ultimately going to end up in your customer's hand and they're not going to give it back to you, all of those things you can avoid paying sales tax on. But I'm not an expert in this, and it does vary state by state, so you'll definitely want to do some of your own research and figure out how this might work for you. Okay, so that was like a lot of, pre-work, and none of that involved the Etsy website at all so far. So now you're at the place where you've kind of gotten everything ready. Now you can do the more administrative part of setting up your Etsy shop. I'm sure there's tons of videos out there that can walk you through this exact process on Etsy's website. And so I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but you're basically going to set up your shop. You're going to make yourself a nice logo if you don't already have one, and a shop header as well. And these things, you can do them in Canva. So Canva is kind of like a DIY graphic design software that pretty much anyone can operate. And I think you can use it for free, but then they also have a subscription as well. So either way, you'll be able to do your own logo and do your own like shop graphics very inexpensively. And you can also edit your listing photos in Canva as well if you want to like add text, or you're making like color swatches or things like that. Canva is going to be a really good tool for you to use, or any similar type of software like that. So then you're going to set up your shop policies, and I'm sure there's a lot of guidance online of how to set up your policies. The one thing that I did want to note is whether or not you should accept returns. So this is something that I was really confused about in the beginning, and I was like, I really don't want to have to deal with the returns. So for quite a while, probably like my first year, I would say, I didn't accept returns. And then at one point I decided to change it. I just decided, you know what, let me just change it and see what happens. And so what I learned is that when I changed my policies to accepting returns, nobody really asked to return anything. Like, it's very rare to get a return. Once in a while, people want to exchange just because they didn't get the right color, or they want, the color doesn't match their decor or whatever it is. But it's very rare that people actually do a return. So I would say from day one, you might want to just consider turning returns on, because it does give the buyer more confidence in shopping with you if they know they have the flexibility to return. And then you'll also want to set up your whole, write a nice about section. And this is what kind of gives your Etsy shop a little bit more personality. And this is also the thing that's going to set you as like a true handmade seller apart from all of the other noise that we're seeing on Etsy nowadays. All right, so once your Etsy shop goes live, that's wonderful. Now you get to just sit back and wait for your first sale to come in, and hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. So for my shop, I think my first sale came within the first few days, and I was really shocked because I thought it would take a lot longer than that. And I didn't just hit the ground running. It was just kind of here and there, like a few sales would trickle in, and eventually like it picked up a little bit more and a little bit more. But I would say like after the first few months, I was getting close to making one sale a day. And when I initially did some research into selling on Etsy before I actually set up my shop, from what I read from people, they made it seem like, oh, you're going to be on Etsy forever before you're even making one sale a day. And that just hasn't been true for me at all. So I think it really depends on your product. My product is like kind of a really more like generic home decor product. So there might be a little bit larger of a customer base that would be interested in this versus if you have kind of a more specialized product. But don't give up. Don't get discouraged if you're not making sales right away. You have to give it time. And if you're not making sales, then you probably need to go back to the drawing board and change some things. Make some little modifications and just keep trying new things. And the other nice thing about Etsy is that you can go to the front end of your Etsy store. As if you're a customer, just go to your Etsy page and you can see if anybody is adding that item to their cart. So when you're just on your shop page, as you can see, if you've ever been on Etsy, you can see, 20 people have this in their cart. 5 people have this in their cart. It will say that. So you can see, are people at least adding it to their cart even if they're not purchasing it? And then it can kind of help you to pivot or figure out what changes you need to make. When you're lucky and you get that first sale, congratulate yourself, because that's a huge achievement and that's amazing, okay? And so when you start making repeat sales of one singular product, even if you just make a couple sales within a couple of weeks, think, okay, this is something that's working. Let me put more energy into this. So once you hit that point of something starts selling and making repeat sales, then you're going to make those different variations of that product. Figure out how else you can change up this product and make something similar that, might also catch on. The key point here is to put your energy into what's working. And if nothing's working, then again, you have to readjust. But whatever is selling, even if that's not your favorite product, again, going back to step one, that's why you want to love everything that you make, because you never know what people are gonna like. And it's not, at the end of the day, it's not up to you, it's up to the customer. So put your energy into what's working, put your customer first, make sure you deliver when you actually make sales, and make your customer service, the customer experience, the product, all these things should be a top priority for your Etsy shop. Okay, so the final step is that once you start making your sales, you're gonna get feedback, you're gonna start getting reviews, you might get some unhappy customers. So all of this stuff, even if it's negative, even if it's ugly, we're gonna turn it all into a positive, and we're gonna use this to improve our products going forward. Or even if we're not changing anything about our product, maybe we're just making little tweaks to our process. Like, for example, my sanding and staining process for the products that I sell it's been night and day. Like, where it is now is just, even something as simple as staining is so complex, and there's such a learning curve that these past 3 years I've become an expert stainer and finisher over this time. So there's gonna be a million opportunities to improve. Every day you're gonna learn something new, even when it comes to just shipping your orders. You're gonna figure out what supplies work best, where to buy them, and it's just gonna be a constant state of improvement from here on out. So you're taking things from good, what we launched with is good, and we're making them even better, and we're being open to change, we're being receptive of feedback, even if we hate it. Don't take things personally. That's the other thing. When you're making something handmade, it's so easy to take stuff personally. I'm absolutely guilty of doing that myself. Being an online seller is going to kind of change the way you are as a consumer. And I think there's something that you should always keep in the back of your mind, is that people are spending their hard-earned money on your product. And it's not really about you anymore, and it's not even really about your craft anymore. It's kind of all about the customer. A few things that I want to just wrap up with here is that, number one, nobody's perfect. What you put out there is never going to be perfect. There will always be people that have complaints or are unhappy with it, and that's okay. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, but the point is that you're just putting your best foot forward every day and doing the best that you can. And it takes a lot of courage to put your creativity out there for public consumption. And that's something that, even if you're just considering it and you never really do it, that's something that, I mean, you should do it, but you should really pat yourself on the back for even wanting to do that, because there's so many people that are so talented, and it's just something that they really fear. I think that when it comes to selling on Etsy, it's something that literally anybody can do it. I think almost anybody can set up an Etsy shop and sell stuff on there. But not everyone is going to be good at it. So constantly be looking for ways that you can set yourself apart. And that can be something as simple as shipping your orders early, packaging things with care, responding to customer messages right away, as quickly as possible. All of these little things just give your customer a much better experience, and you don't even necessarily have to have the best product in the world, but if you're really just delivering a full experience, that customer is going to be happy, they're going to come back, and they're going to tell other people about you as well. So I hope you guys have the best of luck with setting up your Etsy shop. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. And please, if you're open to it, share a link to your shop once you get it set up so that we can support each other. Thank you so much.